Hi guys, can you hear me? Come here.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. Let's see you. So I think we need to get started. It's 10:14, so we already spent 4 minutes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kobu Song from the University of Arkansas, where I serve as professor of political science, public policy, and statistics and analytics. I am also editor-in-chief of Policy Studies Journal, and then the senior editor of the International Journal of Policy Studies, flagship international journal of CAPS. So that's that. It's my pleasure to chair today's IJPS PSJ Special Session entitled Policy Studies at a Crossroads, Identity, Relevance, and Future Directions. Before we begin, I would like to recognize that this session was organized by Dr. Chol Liu with the strong support of CAPS President, Dr. Seok-Hwan Lee, probably one of the most popular person at this meeting. I'm very grateful to both of them, as well as to the Korean Association for Policy Studies for creating this opportunity for a meaningful conversation. Before we start, I'm going to introduce real quick. I'm joined by our co-moderators, Dr. Tae Kim here, and then it's a quick sort of adjustment in the plan. Miss Camille Gilmore in the Zoom. Camille? Oh, great. Dr. Kim will help facilitate the discussion here in the room, and then Ms. Gilmore will monitor the virtual audience and bring online questions and comments into our conversation. So the purpose of this session is not necessarily to arrive at a single definition of policy studies. Rather, we want to consider what holds this increasingly diverse and global field of study together. So policy studies encompasses, of course, policy process theory research, policy analysis, policy design, evaluation, and also problem solving that we focus a lot, especially in South Korea. It also draws from various social science disciplines, ranging from political science, public administration, economics, education, sociology, etc., etc. So this diversity is one of the field's greatest strengths, but it also raises important questions that include, does policy studies have or need a common intellectual core? Are we producing cumulative knowledge or developing parallel conversations? How well do our theories travel across political and institutional context? And how should we balance scholarly rigor with meaningful contribution to public policy that has a direct impact on our real-world welfare, right? So our panelists now here bring perspectives from different countries and intellectual traditions. We have invited them to draw on their own scholarly experiences, institutional settings, and then their own policy research communities. Because we have only 80 minutes this morning, each panelist will have approximately 10 minutes or less for their presentations. After the presentations, the moderators will identify several common themes and maybe pose a few questions to be answered. And we'll then invite discussion among the panelists and then open the conversation to both our in-person and then online audiences. With that, let's begin with our first panelist. In the order in the program, Dr. Chris Weiber. Is Chris there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, and I can see you too. Nice to see you, Chris.
Great. Hi, everyone. Can I begin Gobu then? I think I will. Mm-hmm. First of all, hello, everyone, and thank you for this introduction or this opportunity to introduce my paper for this special session. And I also want to show my appreciation to all those who contributed to the organization of the CAPS conference. I wish I could be there in person, but I'm also very grateful that I can Zoom in and participate as I am. The theme of my paper is policy studies at maturity. And what I mean by maturity is that the field has grown substantially over its past 75 years, and the challenges we have today are very different than what they were 50, 75 years ago. And we have seen the field develop. If you just compare the theories today compared to what they might look like in say the 1970s, you can compare Hoffaber's funnel of causality with any of the theories today about policy change, and you'll find theories today are more coherently developed, empirically examined, supported by increasingly sophisticated methods and so forth. It's also true if you look at the commentaries on our field from, let's say, 50 or 70, 60 years ago. Look at Hugh Heclo, 1972, or Simeon, 1976, or Sabatier, 1991. And the concerns they raised are very different than from the concerns we see today. Everything from concerns about limited theory development to just kind of fragmented and weak empirical evidence, a weakly connected community, and so forth. And again, it's not like we have everything perfect here, but the challenges are just different today. If we look at the infrastructure from the past, Sabatier, just as an example, in 1991, made a plea for better policy journals. And look at what we have today. And even when I, had the honor of editing the Policy Studies Journal in 2008, I invited some of the most prominent political scientists to the journal's editorial board, and they refused because of the quality of the journal. People were regularly regularly refused to submit manuscripts to the journal. And now these same people are probably either on the board, and if they're submitting manuscripts, those manuscripts are probably being rejected because of the quality or whatnot. Look at today, the increasingly globalization of the scholarship. We have international conferences and regional conferences like CAP and so forth. And so the question is no longer whether policy studies has become a mature field. I think it is. The question is what challenges come with maturity. And I'm going to talk about just 4 or 5 of these challenges. One is just losing our historical memory. This is a really important point. Each generation that today inherits a field that earlier generations helped build. That was not the case 40, 50 years ago. And even if you were a student of someone who helped create the field, you knew firsthand the lessons that were learned in its development. Today, we're multiple generations away from the beginning. And that leads us to forgetting or running the risk of not learning past debates, repeating past mistakes, overlooking lessons of past successes, essentially recreating the wheel. And it's also hard because each of us there isn't just one history. There's histories by region. There's histories by person. And in communicating that and drawing these lessons is just really difficult for a field that's been around for a while. I also want to talk about the challenges and missed opportunities of cross-cutting learning. It's important to say that maturity also comes with specialization. And specialization naturally comes with parallel development, meaning that the field is just developing with specializations and not a lot of communication between those specializations. This is inevitable as we learn and advance. And this challenge in this situation is actually, I'll just bring up another example of me as an editor. Back in 2008, if I received a manuscript on a policy theory, as an example, I can mention the Advocacy Coalition framework. I could send that to people outside that framework, people who used other theories, and they would readily be able to critique and provide feedback. That is less so the case now. We've gotten so specialized that people, and so deep in our knowledge that people have a hard time even cross-cutting or crossing over and using different theories. That wasn't always the case. And again, this is it's not a bad thing. We've gotten better, but it also comes with challenges. I also want to say that as fields mature, we come with challenges, as Gobu mentioned, just defining and measuring what progress means. It's no longer just cranking out more publications. What does it mean for our field to move forward now? We have good conferences like this one. We have good journals. We have good theories. What does it mean to advance things? And these are just important questions we need to ask now. And if I were to bring up one more thing, it's just building sustaining capacity. just because the field is mature does not mean that the quality is evenly high. In fact, the field is very uneven. And one of the challenges is trying to maintain some degree of quality or increasing the degree of I guess development across the world and in particular regions and within across countries. And this can come through workshops or training, doctoral trainings, conferences like this, mentoring, international collaborations that's happening here. But that building and sustaining capacity is definitely one of the challenges that I think I've talked to a lot of people in a lot of different countries that we face. I'm just going to end saying that, I do think mature fields must intentionally cultivate the things I mentioned: historical memory, create opportunities for learning and cross specialization, revisit the standards of our progress, and invest in sustaining scholarly capacity. And I'll end there. So thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to the discussion and everybody else's presentations.
That was excellent, Chris. Thank you so much. For those, I realize that there are some people, it's very uncommon in the United States, but some people who don't know Chris Weiber. He's the current acting dean of School of Public Affairs, CU Denver, right? Yeah.
Sorry, sorry, it's Chris Weibel, School of Public Affairs, interim dean, and former editor of Policy Studies Journal, and wrapping up my editorship for the journal Policy and Politics.
That's right. Thank you so much. Very good. The next speaker from, I don't know if he's in Florida or China, Hong Tao Yi. Hong Tao.
Hi, thank you, Professor Song, for the introduction. I'm currently in Florida. You can see from the fan, so it's very hot. So, all right, it's really an honor to join the meeting virtually. I wish I can be there in person. And this is an extension of our collaboration with the Korean Association Policy Studies, which started in last year in APAM. That we, Professor Song, Professor Hunjin Park, and President So-Hwan Lee, and Professor Han Sang-ha, and then the five of us met and discussed a strategic collaboration between KAPS and then Chinese Policy Scholars Group. As well as my current role as president of public policy section at American Political Science Association, we're thinking about opportunities to work together. And this summer, we had an international conference in China where we invited Professor Lee, Professor Ha to the meeting, as well as Professor Weibel and many international scholars to join the meeting in China. For a conference on international dialogues and policy research, and that really went really well. We appreciate the support from the Korean Association of Policy Studies, and then this is a great opportunity. And also, I really appreciate the reciprocal invitation to join the meeting, and I really cherish this opportunity. So to save some time, I just want to start my presentation, which I do have a set of slides. I'm so sorry. Where's that? Okay, it's right here. And Professor Song asked me to prepare a kind of a research question for this. I was thinking about what to do. So I asked one of my co-authors to put together a set of slides, and we're, kicking ideas back and forth to think about comparing the China and U.S. policy research. So the title is Shared Theories and Different Different Routes. So basically, we use Policy Studies Journal, the top journal in our field, as a platform to examine the published articles with the focus on China and U.S. to see the differences in the topic coverage and then theories being studied. So the goal is to see if there is any similarity and differences across the two countries and scholars and a scholarly community in their focus. We all know that the policy theories originated from the United States. The early scholars in China were mostly focused on testing and advancing theories that were developed in the US. And we just wanted to know if the recent trend to internationalize, as well as the intention to develop an independent policy scholar community, really shows up in the top journal as different or similar topics. So that's our goal. So we basically did a simple research design. We extract the abstracts from the last 10 years, from 2016 to 2025, 10 issues from PSJ, and then we did a analysis on the abstract. We used topic modeling, so to compare the publication trends for research with a focus on China versus the research focus on the United States. Here's our quick finding. So, of course, there's a difference in terms of number of publications. We all know that PSJ is a U.S. focus. Started from the U.S. and it's the official journal of American Political Science Association Public Policy section. So therefore, many more scholars from the U.S. were involved in the journal from the beginning and then until now. So it's not it's uncommon. I'm also editing Publication Review. We do have more U.S. scholars than scholars from other countries, which is normal. So if you do the comparison, in the last 10 years, there are 283 articles authored by U.S. scholars, and then there are 20 articles with a focus on China. But still, it's ranked number 4 for non-U.S. affiliation locations after the UK, Switzerland, and Germany. So we use this as a comparison to see the topical allocation in 2 different countries. So as you can see, the blue color represents the studies focus on the United States. And then the orange color represents China-focused research. You can see that there are more in the U.S. There are heavier emphasis on social policy feedback. And then second is agenda attention and punctuated equilibrium, followed by polycentric collaborative governance and advocacy coalition framework, and then policy diffusion and learning. And the difference between the two is you do see more as compared to the United States. The focus on collaborative governance is not as pronounced, a smaller percentage, but there's a heavier emphasis on agenda setting in China. But surprisingly, there are more scholars studying. The percentage of studying advocacy coalition is slightly higher than the similar topic in the United States. Again, this is based on a small number of articles, only 20 articles, and but other categories like diffusion and policy, narrative policy framework are very similar. So that's in terms of number of articles, and we also have. Oh, 1 second, I couldn't. Okay. Can you still see my screen? Not sure. I'm still sharing my screen. I just want to make sure 1 second.
We see it across the top.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. It's just sort of a. So just to save some time, in China, the topical, there's some interesting points. For example, on the agenda setting, the focus is on how central government prioritize and filter recognition and allocate policies. So it's slightly different, that even though it's on agenda setting, it's very different than what's being covered in the United States. And then in China, the focus on local experimentation and local policy pilots is more visible as compared to the United States, where they focus on the diffusion, which is a slightly different concept. In China, there's also a significant number of research focused on advocacy coalitions. Of course, Professor Wai will play the bigger role in elevating this research area, but it's slightly different. The citizen level versus the policy actor influence are some of the key differences. And in the United States, there are more heavier emphasis on policy conflict and coalitions. There's more emphasis on venue access, procedure stages, and administrative discretion. And so basically, we did a comparison on between China and US. We would look at the primary, whether they focus on central authorities, vertical authorization versus policy venues and procedure access. And also other different aspects of evidence and contingency. So I will conclude here, given limited time. So we did a very quick analysis using PSJ as a sample. Of course, this is very preliminary. We should include more articles, including articles from other top journals, including Policy and Politics and maybe Policy Sciences and other journals. So yeah, and I look forward to developing this further, and look forward to feedback from the audience. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hong Tao. It was very interesting. I didn't know that you given a very short amount of time, you did actual data analysis and things like that. So that's pretty impressive. Thank you.
Yeah, you gave me a task. I need to get it done. So
good. Yeah, very good. And then the next guest speaker is going to be Professor Makoto Usami. Is it right? Okay, are you ready? Yep. Mm-hmm. You can introduce yourself real quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's my great pleasure to be here, and I want to begin by thanking the CAPS organizing committee for having me and for their great hospitality. My name is Makoto Usami from Kyoto University, and also I'm affiliated as a visiting professor at the Institute for Ethics in Artificial Intelligence at TUM, Technical University of Munich. And I served as the president of the Public Policy Studies Association in Japan. Actually, my term terminated this year, but so today I make a brief presentation on behalf of my successor president. Okay, and then my today's theme is the retrospective of the 75 years of Japanese policy studies. And I want to describe briefly the basic trends and background factors underlying such trends, as well as recent challenges. Okay, and then, okay. So let me begin with the basic trends of the policy studies in terms of the number of scholarly papers. So as you can see here, in the 1990s, and in the 20s, you can see significant increase in the number of papers. And these papers are only papers published in the academic journals, such as the issued by the academic associations, as well as the university bulletins. And then the question is why? Why we see the gradual increase in the number of papers in the 1990s and the rapid increase in the 20s. And I want to introduce some background factors. Well, in the 1980s, Japan and the US had a strong relationship in terms of international trade. And in those days, the US had a massive amount of trade deficit. So the US government demanded the Japanese government to launch the large-size public works. But unfortunately, in the year of 1990, economic bubble collapsed. So the result is that the Japanese government had to issue a massive amount of national bonds to fund the large-size public works projects. And then the financial situation of the Japanese government has rapidly deteriorated. And then the pressure, social pressure towards the enhancement of the efficiency in administration has been increased. So the result was the administrative reforms. And then, against this backdrop, research interest in public policies, especially the national public policies, has been increased. So then we can see, we can explain the increase in the number of the publications about public policies, particularly at national level, in the 1990s and in the 20s in this way. At the same time, in these decades, we saw the high development of the institutional decentralization. You know, throughout the post-war era, Japanese society has held a highly centralized political regime. And in the 1970s, some local governments went against such centralized tradition, and they attempted to some kind of decentralizations. But in the 1980s, their attempted basically failed. And then in the 1990s, we saw the national government-led decentralization policies. And then the researchers began to look at not only the national policies, but also the local policies in those days. Okay, and then, yep. Also, in the 1990s and in the 2000s, we saw the new establishment of the graduate schools as well as the undergraduate departments of public policies within universities. So the more researchers got together in such graduate schools as well as departments, also doctoral students were required to publish scholarly papers to have their submitted dissertations examined by the faculty. Okay, then let me briefly describe the number of papers by major policy areas. So you can see a red line. Red line indicates the papers on the economic policy as well as finance, public finance policy. And you can see that the economics and finance was the most studied up to the early 20s. But interestingly, in the late 2000s, new policy areas become the hotspot in the policy studies. Namely, education, the culture policies attracted the most academic interest among researchers. And after education and culture, social welfare and social security have also attracted much research attention. And then the question is again, why? And I want to suggest one social factor lying behind such new research interest in the education, the culture, as well as social welfare and security. Well, since the 1990s, Japanese society has been evidently and obviously the aging society. Actually, these trends already started even in the 1970s, actually. But in the 1990s, such trend was very obvious, and the social awareness as well as the political attempts in relation to the aging society phenomena were salient in those days. And then the researchers began to have a new interest in education based on their interest in the child care as well as the children. Also, pension system sustainability was a big issue in political agenda. So against these backgrounds, we can see new trends in terms of the number of the scholarly papers. Also, I want to suggest one academic the factors lying behind such new trends. We, in the past few decades, we have had the increasing number of female researchers who have significantly contributed to the development of the education studies as well as the social welfare studies. So due to the increase of the female studies in academia, I speculate that one of the consequences of such number of the female researcher increasing was the new trend of the research topics. Okay. Also, yeah, in this connection, I want to mention one more trend. namely from the qualitative study to quantitative study. Nowadays, we have an increasing number of the quantitative studies. So we have now both the statistical observations as well as the qualitative findings. Okay, and then this is the last. Can you wrap it up? Oh, yeah, sure. Kind of run out of time. Yep. And then let me conclude my presentation by mentioning the recent challenges. As you saw in the previous slide, we have a decreasing number of the papers in recent years, and the important factor is aging researcher population. Also, I want to emphasize this challenge, namely the Japanese researchers have had a tendency to publish on largely in Japanese. So given these challenges, I believe that we should take the direction of the internationalization, both in terms of research and education. Thank you very much.
Excellent. That was excellent. Thank you so much. The next speaker is going to be Dr. Grichawat Roatcharin from Thailand.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Professor Song and Professor Liu, for allowing me to join this session. My name is Grichawat Roatcharin. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Research and Global Affairs from the College of Public Affairs and Policy in Khon Kaen University. We are from the northeastern part of Thailand, which is the largest, the most populous, and the poorest part of the country. That's why it is a very good policy geographical area to study in Thailand. So a lot of new new policy or sandbox conducted in that region of the country as a spearhead or as an experiment for the government policy in the future. My presentation today is about policy studies from a Thai perspective. I would like to share with you the experiences and the lesson from Thailand, which is an upper middle income country still, even though a 3 or 4 decades of development policy, we still struggle in the middle income trap, and policy study would be one of the crucial methods to help us go through this and become a high income country. I would like to start with the historical identity of the policy study in Thailand. Policy studies in Thailand is part of a larger political science and public administration discipline. In the past or historically, it had been part of the Faculty of Political Science in major university, for example, in Chulalongkorn and Thammasat University. And I think during the Cold War, the U.S. government helped us establish a graduate school or a graduate institution, National Graduate Institution in Development Administration, which includes the policy study discipline, or we call NIDA. Then it had been the first graduate school in public administration. But in recent development, there are, let's say, newer schools or university that open new colleges or faculties related to public policy, for example, in Khon Kaen University and in Chiang Mai University in the north and the northeast, that address policy issues in a more interdisciplinary sense, not only from the political side or from the public administration point of view, but also from economics, urban planning, economics, and business administration as well. So those are for example, the two examples are the newest development. By newest, I mean 20 years ago. And in Thailand, why do we care about policy study in Thailand? Thailand serves as a, let's say, peculiar or strange setting or environment for studying policy because we are, let's say, a fragmented centralism country. We tend to centralize things, but in the central government, they are fragmented into different departments or ministry that don't coordinate or poorly coordinate. And then we have an issue of uneven decentralization, meaning that even though we have tried to decentralize powers to local governments 30 years ago, still local government have really limited authority, especially in terms of fiscal aspect. And the Thai bureaucratic system is very centralized and very strong, sometimes stronger than the politically elected officials. And from time to time, they overthrew the government. I mean, the military itself. That's a challenge for us, and we have informal relations, in particular between the elites and the let's say network in the national level. And there's some issue of inequality in the country. We are one of the worst in unequal or inequitable countries in the world, especially in terms of wealth inequality. And last but not least, I think this is the most important question, is the political instability. I will share with you later. Just to show you how complex the structure is for Thailand, we have two systems that running together. The older provincial administration system, that is the bureaucratic system, and the newer local government system. So we have two structures that formulate and implement policy, and sometimes they work well together, and most of the time there's some conflicts and some over supervision or control from the national government. So this is a especially important case for Thailand. And like I said, the political instability in Thailand that makes it difficult to conduct policies or to implement policy continuously over the long period of time. As you can see here, we have gone through 12, if not 13 coups data in the past since we became a democratic country in 1932. And the last two coups were in 2006 and 2014 that led to new constitution that kind of overthrow the old government policies and start new regimes, things like that. So this kind of military coups and political instability in Thailand has been impeded the continuous implementation of policy. And for now, in the scholarly world in Thailand, we are focusing on 4 or 5 different issues that are related to public policy. The first one is, of course, using AI and digital technology in transforming public sector. Second one is very important for us because we need more labor from our neighboring countries. The issue of migration and inequality, not only from the migration, not only from the neighboring countries, but also expats or long-term visitors from the West. Also, that creates a lot of social and economic issues. The climate change and disaster management is another crucial issue nowadays, especially when we face with thunderstorms or typhoons or even earthquake in recent months. The democratic backsliding, like in many other countries, the trend toward a more authoritarian regime or more autocratic regime has been also experiencing in Thailand. And the last but not least is the complete age society, which is crucial. Unlike Japan and South Korea, Thailand has become old before becoming rich. So we get old before we getting rich. So it makes it very difficult for the Thai government to provide public services to handle challenges that come with age society. And also we are now talking about the so-called silver economy, to how to deal with the economic issue around age society and older people. And in terms of theories and methodology, today students, doctoral students in Thailand, especially in my university, they adopted a lot of or modify a lot of grand theories in the policy study, for example, multiple stream theory or IAD, but with some elements or some touch for some theoretical background from developing world. For example, using the MSF to explore nickel ban policy in Indonesia, or to address the gender inequality or same-sex marriage in Thailand, things like that. So these are the recent developments, and I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we have two more presentations. Dr. Lian Long from Netherlands. Lian, are you there? Okay, great.
Yes,
Nice to
hello.
see you. Yeah, go ahead.
It's nice to see all of you. Hi, I apologize if I don't have the strongest Wi-Fi connection. I'm actually at my mother-in-law's in Sicily, and unfortunately, so I hope that I'm able to stay online throughout for this talk. So I'd like to thank the panel organizers for inviting me and allowing me to zoom in. And I'd also like to thank Professor Song for sending us some really great questions that helped us to reflect. And mine is going to be more a reflection than a paper talk. So it's really interesting to reflect on our field of study at a point where we're, as Professor Weibel is talking about, experiencing a lot of impulses from different directions and change impulses. And I go back to Professor Sabetier's essay in 1991, where he talks about how our field grew out from political sciences as in response to three impulses. That is, the first being a call for greater understanding of where policies come from. The second being innovations from the field, and he cites Easton's work on systems. And the third being the kind of problems that they were facing in the 60s and 70s that required deeper understanding of policy and politics. And I feel that that's where we are again. So thinking of punctuated equilibrium theory, one might say that we're at a period of punctuation right now with a lot of things going on. So we've heard about AI, democratic backsliding, climate change, and all of these impulses are working together to ask us to once again innovate. We are very lucky in policy studies that we are intrinsically interdisciplinary, and I would say perhaps in the next life transdisciplinary. So I'm also reflecting, thanks also to the questions that we received, about how that has shaped the work that I'm doing now as a policy studies scholar. And for my part, I think that I'm taking this from my positionality as being a scholar who's working from a STEM university. So a lot of these issues and methods are really what we think about here at the University of Twente. Energy transitions, algorithms, digitalization, and AI, those are our bread and butter here at our university. And that's made me think, okay, since my work now lies at that interface of policy studies and STEM topics, what does that mean for me? And first of all, it means more methods and thinking about what are the new approaches that we can think about as policy scholars. So when I was doing my PhD studies, I started to think about network science. That was very new to me. We were learning a lot of quantitative and qualitative methods, and for quant, it was a lot of econometrics, of course, and statistics. And network science, though, helped me to think about interdependencies between our object of study, which is policy, and all of the different things that shape it. And now I'm thinking more and more about transdisciplinarity. That's a big topic here in Europe. And second, art-based research. So we're thinking about futures. We're talking about policies which are uncertain, and we don't know what AI or climate change is going to do for the societies that we study. And therefore, we need these kinds of methodologies that allow us to go back to the future, as one might think about. And that's why art-based methodology is something that I'm really interested in right now as a scholar here in the Netherlands. A second thing that I'm thinking about is where we borrow from. So I've read and reread a lot of the perspectives, so including Professor Weibel's and Carney's work, of course, and they talk about psychology. We borrow from economics, political sciences, sociology, and now I think we should also look at STS. So the socio-technical studies in the future and are also offering us a lot of insights into how we work. Frank Geels, he wrote his MLP here at the University of Twente. He developed that theory and framework, and I think there's also, as Professor Weibel was talking about, a lot of opportunity for cross-fertilization. So one of the main things that STS scholars are concerned about is policy, governance. And I think that we are not in that space enough. And this presents an opportunity for us to think about that, to work with that. In my reflection, I also thought about the work that I'm doing, notably with colleagues Gwen Arnold from the University of California, Davis, and Rachel Krause from Kansas. And we're looking at not just who will transform, why they will transform, but who has the capacity to transform. And I think that our policy studies orientation really makes us think about the processes that drive transformation forward. And we were looking specifically at climate change as an impulse for transformation, but we're hoping that our colleagues here will also look at other fields like AI and digitalization, and also authoritarian how authoritarianism is shaping the way that policies emerge and change. Where do we go from here? Well, as one of the easy or low-hanging fruit is to start doing reviews. So about, I think 10 years ago in public administration research, there was a call for more reviews in that field. And I think here in policy studies, especially given the maturity of our discipline, there's an opportunity to also look back and reinvigorate our memory by doing more reviews at this moment in time. Another thing is, when I was a grad student, I read Ellison's Cuban Missile Crisis, and that was very instrumental for me to think about what I study from 3 different perspectives. And later on, Professor Weibel also published a paper on expertise, and he used 3 different policy frameworks on that. And I think that before I start any project, here in Europe, we're very project-based, I also think about the topic. So I'm now leading a project, for example, on energy transitions, and I'm leading another one on digitalizations and hospitals. And before I even begin to write the project, proposal, I use that framework, sort of like, what are the 3 policy frameworks that are applicable here? What insights do I derive from doing this thought experiment? And I think that's another useful exercise for us as policy scholars. Let's go back to the frameworks that we have, the tools that we have, the tricks of our trade, whenever we confront some of these new things that confront us. And then in my reflection, I also talk about, of course, teaching and the classroom as a place where we innovate and experiment, and to think about how that's also one of those areas where we're building the future of policy studies. So do we also do these reflections in our classroom? How do our students responses and engagements with these questions also shape our thinking about the future of our field. And I forgot to mention in our reflection, this is also a time for more collaboration with other emerging fields, just as like ours was emerging quite a while ago. There are some cross-cutting fields and interdisciplinary fields that are emerging at this very moment, and it is really a great opportunity for us to reach out and to work with them as well, scholars from that field. I collaborate with a lot of colleagues also in STEM and STS, and for that reason. Finally, again, I'd like to thank Professor Song for those questions. They were really helpful to me. It felt like a homecoming after writing a lot of STS-oriented papers in the last 2 years to think about our discipline. And I thought, well, one of the questions that I feel like we're missing here is, what aren't we? So there were a lot of questions about, well, what are we? Where should we go? What should we be doing? But I think sometimes boundaries are built by thinking, what don't we want to do? Why don't we want to do that? And perhaps thinking about what we aren't will be very, very helpful for us in thinking together about what we are, what we can be, and what we will be. I thank you all for your attention, and I thank all of the colleagues for continuing to be engaged really in our field. It is a field that is maturing, but it's also rapidly developing because we are at this frontier. There are these impulses, and I would say we're at a pivot point for our disciplines. So thank you very much for the attention, and I look forward to your questions.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Rian. And then we have a final speaker, Dr. Keunyoung Lee.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Keunyoung Lee. I'm a professor at Florida State University, and I'm also the associate editor-in-chief of the Risk Management and Healthcare Policy, which is one of the policy area journal. And thank you for having me here, and thank you very much to President Seok-Hwan Lee and Professor Hyun Sang-ha and Professor Yu. The topic I'm going to talk about thoughts on policy studies. And before this presentation, I received emails from Professor Kobu Song and asking so many questions. So I do not know how to approach. So I talked to my lab members, and they gave me a bunch of ideas. And by integrating all those ideas, and the paper that I submitted was somewhat separated and disconnected paper. And Professor Song gave me some comments, so I try to make it a little bit nicer than what I used to have. But anyway, and the benefit of presenting at the very last is because the previous presenters already talked about many of the contents that I presented already. So from time to time, I try to skip my presentation slides. Okay. The topic that I'm going to talk about is intellectual identity of policy studies, where it comes from, and theoretical and methodological development and persistent challenges that we currently face, then the future of policy study. And if I look at the program book just before the presentation, and it's all about AI. So it's my mistake to include this AI in this presentation, but I'll briefly talk about that. And conclusion is the broader policy study field. Okay. The intellectual identity of a policy study, since Harold Leswell talked about policy orientation in 1951, and policy study has developed a recognizable identity, and core content include defining public problems, agenda setting, policy formulation and selection, implementation, evaluation, and distribution of policy benefit and burdens. And he also emphasized the problem orientation, multidisciplinary field, and theoretical and methodological sophistication, and a value orientation toward human dignity. So probably if you look at the past like 70 years of policy study, you probably can find any of these topics in your mind. And these shared concerns provide substantial intellectual coherence across policy process, analysis, evaluation, design, institution, and implementation. Then the theoretical and methodological development has developed over past 70 years, and the field has evolved beyond the stage heuristic and embracing increasingly more sophisticated theories and frameworks for understanding policy processes. The major frameworks, and you name it, you can see some IAD or ACF, which is Dr. Song's main area, and policy diffusion, punctuated equilibrium, on and on and on. And policy study has also expanded methodological approaches, including greater attention to causal mechanism. So these days, more causal mechanism rather than statistical association is more popular. And its multidisciplinary scope spans environmental policy, housing policy, or civic rights, healthcare, which is my area of interest, and macroeconomics, and even microeconomics, national defense, and space policy as well. So you can name any of policy areas, and you can develop more sophisticated methodological development. Then, what I'm trying to say today, the main content is persistent challenges. And first one is theory development. Policy studies has sought to integrate diverse mid-range policies, which was the theoretical framework I just mentioned in the previous slides, although these frameworks have often developed and operated in parallel. But many scholars try to integrate these kind of small, mid-range theories as much as they can. And as Dr. Weibo and a previous presenter talked about, if you look at policy study journals, you can see many articles talking about using several theoretical frameworks at the same time. So these mid-range theoretical framework can be combined together in order to answer policy questions that we have. Yet, the field must now adapt these different theories to increasingly more socio-technical policymaking processes. So the current society is moving more socio-technical policy processes. And the second challenge is theory and practice combining. So limited integration and theoretical sophisticated policy process research with practical policy analysis, design, and evaluation is currently exist. So process theorists often emphasize agenda setting and policy change, while policy analysts emphasize evaluation and design methodologies. So if you look at any political science department who has these two different branches of policy studies, they often fight and never talk to each other. So, and theoretical rigor and practical relevance should be complementary. It's not competing each other. They should be complementary and try to help each other to develop theory and practice together. Okay. And what can we do in the future? The policy study in the future, which is the age of AI, and AI changes not only policy substance, but also the actors, institutions, and instruments through which policy is formulated and implemented. And also, policy studies increasingly operate as a socio-technical process involving human actor, data infrastructure, predictive models, and automated system. So policy studies needs to broaden its traditional focus on human decision-making and formal institution. So there are three roles you can see in the three roles of AI in policy study. The first one is AI as a policy-making process. So algorithm, so the way you ask AI to react, organize information, structure choices, and rank risks potentially influencing how policymakers define problems and select alternatives. So we need to develop how to make this kind of algorithm more efficiently and effectively in order to tackle public policy issues. And second role is the AI as a policy object. So we must determine how AI should be governed in relation to privacy, discrimination, market power, transparency, and accountability. And third one is AI as a subject of policy evaluation. So scholars must assess whether AI-related policy and application achieve intended objectives. If not, then you need to go back and rewrite the algorithm and try to see what can we find in a different way and distribute benefit and burdens fairly and produce unintended consequences. So we need to think about these three different roles in the AI in the future when we study policy studies. So the conclusion that I'm trying to say is AI does not make established policy theories irrelevant, but it reveals some limitations of theory developed for predominantly human-centered and relatively stable policymaking environment. So we need to continue to develop more mid-range theory coherently integrating together. And policy studies should retain its problem-oriented and multidisciplinary foundation while reconsidering power, institution, discretion, implementation, evaluation, and accountability within socio-technical systems. And the future scholarship, so I saw a lot of younger generation of scholars and should broaden its concept of policy actors, institution, instruments, and outcomes to include algorithm, data infrastructure, and technological systems. And finally, the field future depends on two complementary goals: developing coherent theory using mid-range theories, and connecting theories insight to practical policy design, implementation, and evaluation. And I'll try to give one of the examples that I'm using for this policy study in my research. And I am participating in one research conducted by the Korean Ministry of Health and Welfare. And the current Minister of Department of Health and Welfare try to use more AI in the policymaking process and policy-making proposals. So she asked one of the research arm of the Ministry of Health and Welfare to use what US CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, is using about the policy process development framework. So they are using policy evaluation framework. So there are 5 different contents in the policy evaluation framework. First one is policy identification. Second one is policy evaluation. Third one is policy development. And fourth one is policy budget and finance. And finally, the last one is policy implementation. So based on these 5 different categories of policy evaluation framework, using AI to find what are the contents. And US CDC is using this policy framework to develop their proposal from local government, state government, and federal government when they apply to the CDC grants. So there are many different kinds of policy programs that are using this CDC policy evaluation. So smoking cessation, for example, they're using it, or these 5 different categories, and diabetes management, and child care licensing and standards. All these kind of policy programs are quite easily applicable to any countries, like Japan, the aging society, Korea as well, Thailand as well. So if you try to use AI more properly and using these kind of different policy framework for your own country's perspective, and I think we can be more beneficial and we can develop our policy study in a more efficient and effective way. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so now Dr. Kim, one of the co-moderators, are gonna kind of share the thoughts and then maybe pose some questions so that the panelists can respond. Anybody who is ready for that, so go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction. So my name is Tae-hee Kim. I'm from Seoul National University of Science and Technology. Currently, I'm serving as a co-editor-in-chief for the International Journal of Policy Study with my colleague Eunju Lo from Northern Illinois University. First, I would like to thank you, Dr. Song, for organizing this really wonderful session and then for sharing a thought-provoking question, which was really a lot, like Dr. Kunyong said. But they gave us a very much valuable opportunity to step back from our research and reflect on a much more broader issue, which is identity and future of policy study. And also, on a personal note, interestingly, we have two panelists from Florida, and then I actually returned back from Florida last weekend, so I feel a little bit of Florida connection today. And then thank you so much for very much interesting and soulful presentation. After listening to all six of them, I was really fascinated and struck by the diversity of perspectives and also by a common theme running through those presentations. So we kind of agree that the policy study has clearly matured and developed as a recognizable intellectual identity. But at the same time, it is becoming more specialized and more international, as we shared for today, and more sensitive to institutional context, while facing new and increasingly complex policy challenges, like Dr. Kunyong said. So I believe that this leaves us with one broad question. So what does progress actually mean for policy studies today? So as the field become more diverse in terms of theory, method, and context, so how do we know whether we are building cumulative knowledge rather than simply creating more parallel conversation? So is progress greater theoretical integration or better causality explanation or greater generalizability or strong real-world impact? So that is kind of overarching question I would like to raise to every panelist in here.
That's an excellent question. So anybody want to step in and maybe Chris, do you want to share some thoughts on that question or?
Sure. A great question. I'll be quick. I do think the challenges like greater impacts, better theories, so forth. Yeah, we should be paying attention to all of those. I mean, I think Gobu started with one of the beautiful things about this field is the diversity of it, and people care about different aspects of it. Some people are very applied, and some people are very theoretical. I think our metrics of progress can embrace both of those. I'd also say that, you know, I might repeat part of my talk is one of the challenges we do have now is that we are in a place where we should be starting measuring progress. And actually, we do need to show our worth. And I say worth is both to the people to give us money, to our students, to each other, to practitioners, and so forth. In part because, you know, we can't exist without them. And so what that worth or what showing value means is going to be contingent on those different audiences. It won't be just one argument. Our students may need something different than, let's say, our decision makers and so forth. And obviously, we need something different from each other. But I think just paying attention to those metrics of learning and advancement and developing those over time is an imperative right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Anybody else want to make a comments on that? Hong Tao or so that Lian has a lot of thoughts, well trained. So
I do have a lot of thoughts. Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Professor Weibel that we have to, I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, by the way, that we have to look at progress from from a lot of perspectives, and that there's, in the same way that governance is probably best served when it's polycentric, I think our field is also best served when we have progress on different fronts, not just methodological or theoretical and applied. I think I'd also like to think about regress in our field. And I think one of the big challenges that we're facing also, and perhaps that's why the legitimacy that Professor Weibel is talking about is really important, is that the way that the field is resourced is changing. So for example, here in Europe, a lot of the resourcing is around what is increasingly important to citizens and societies. And so a lot of the calls for applications are focused around that. And as policy studies, because we are, as I said in my reflection, straddling that liminal space between science and society, that's how we were born, to answer these questions about human dignity, and how we progress towards that, right? Like, how do the different methodological, theoretical, and applied applications in our field push human dignity forward in the collective and individual sense. And but I think we are also seeing a lot of regress as governments are deciding what it is that we research, as they're constraining our ability to collaborate with one another. So it's not just specialization, but it's also following the resources and who's deciding what we do study. And that's why I think it's incredibly important that we also look at questions of democratic backsliding and authoritarianism right now, because the field is changing also because of how societies are changing. And so I think as much as we want to reflect on progress, we need to also keep an eye out for regress and how those external impulses from society are feeding into the way that we do science and what we prioritize and what we choose to study and not to study. So thank you for that.
That was excellent. Thank you so much. We're going to go back to online audience first and then get back here and then maybe get one or two questions from the floor. So Camille, did you get any questions? Yeah.
Yes, so so I'm going to pull together a few questions that we have from our participants. And so one is, how can policy studies remain relevant in addressing major societal challenges such as declining public trust, inequality, climate change, and demographic change, while also strengthening the connection between scholarship, policy, and politics?
Okay, there was always a tension, right? So anybody want to respond to that? You can use your own example from your home country, or because you kind of mentioned that, right?
Yeah. There are always challenges in regarding policy studies, especially when you need some funding from government agency, and you need to somehow to satisfy them in your research. And now that research studies I would like to share the case of Thailand. The government would like research study that not only publish, I mean, some that lead to some publication, but also some innovative ideas or practicality or commercialization aspect to that. So policy studies that focus or publish or just analyze the policy itself would not be granted any budget allocation for that. So it's a challenge for Thai scholars to come up with some proposal that not only analyze or evaluate the policy, but also to move forward beyond that to maybe somehow provide or offer some ideas for practical solution or digital applications or things like that. So that's always a challenge for in the recent 5 years in Thailand. Yeah.
Anybody else wanna? You go ahead.
Thank you very much for your great question. I want to characterize the Japanese policy studies as the a kind of research-oriented rather than practice-oriented. I mean, a large number of political scientists have conducted the policy studies, and one of the features is the research-oriented. So, of course, we deal with the actual problems in the context of the policy agenda, but nonetheless, I think that the awareness of the practicality of research findings has been not so strong up to date. So maybe we have a huge challenge of the connecting the research findings with the practical solutions in the real world settings. Thank you.
Dr. Lee?
I'll be brief.
I realized that I just look at the program, and after this, it's the lunch time.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
so we
want me
can
to
use
stop?
this space a little bit.
You want me to stop?
No, we can use.
Medicare and Medicaid are two largest federal and state welfare program in the U.S., and there are a lot of mistrust and fraud cases related to those two programs. But if the research try to identify is the mistrust and fraud are really happening, then we need to find a way to lower those kind of fraud and mismanagement of the program. If not, then the government need to publicize what they are doing correctly and try to emphasize the right thing, what they are doing. And it depends on who is in charge in the government. So Republicans try to lower those kind of social welfare program, but Democrat government try to increase those social politics. So there's a power game in between those two parties. But if you try to publicize what they are doing correctly, then it probably lower the mistrust against the government.
Good. I look at the program, like I said, I briefly mentioned that, and I realized that right after this, there was no session. It's a lunch time, 1.5 hour lunch time. So we can use this space a little bit. I think that the conversation is really interesting, at least to me. So anybody in the floor, the audience, have any questions? If you have any questions, just gonna raise your hand, and I think that we can deliver the microphone. Nobody? Okay. Camille, I'm going to go back to you. Do you have any other question there
Yes,
online?
yeah, I have one more.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead.
all right, and it's, of course, they hit on it a bit, but so as policy studies continues to grow and become more interdisciplinary, what challenges does this create for the identity and the direction of the field, and how should policy scholars respond?
Who is going to? Hong Tao, I think you've been pretty quiet, right? I have a pretty good memory. He's not there? Hong Tao.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just very late in the evening. My brain is not
I'm
functioning
sorry.
very well. But thank you for asking me to respond to this question. I think it's pretty much across the board in many nations that we have this decline in public trust. And then many issues are very complex. And I think for policy scholars, and then especially our training for our next generation of scholars, is that they need to learn more skills, not only theory, but also methods, but also the deal with the challenge of emergence of AI. And that's just been a huge challenge. And I think many issues are basically are intertwined. And so basically that needs a more comprehensive capacity, not only to know the process, but also know the substantive. So we're talking about the conflict or potential contention between policy analysis and policy process, but really requires that we know both to be able to be actively engaged in actual conversation in our research, but also in the practice.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I know it's quite late in the United States, especially the East Coast, and so probably we kind of need to wrap up. Thank you to all of your panelists for such thoughtful and insightful reflections, and to our moderators for helping guide the conversation and conduct our in-person and virtual audiences. I hope this conversation will continue beyond today. The written reflections or reflection papers prepared for this session may be revised in light of our conversation and developed into IJPS symposium issue. That was sort of an idea. Finally, my sincere thanks again to the CAPS, Korean Association for Policy Studies, and everyone who joined us today, and here in Gwangju and then online. Thank you so much. Online participants, we are gonna have, that's a Korean tradition, we are gonna have a group photo. So don't leave yet. Okay? Koreans love taking pictures.